Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Arthur Edwards. Now, a lot of you may remember Arthur when he was on our network previously. Well, people, this man has so much to offer. We needed to invite him back. Today's show is going to be all about his wonderful book, A Hero's Life. In addition to that, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, of course, his personal website, ArthurEdwardsBooks.com. It's where you're going to have to go for purchasing. But he also has a book called The War We Almost Lost, followed by The Journey to Hangtown Haven, and lastly, War is Hell. All four of these magnificent books, again, available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the regular online book resellers. But make sure you check out his personal site, ArthurEdwardsBooks.com, to gather everything that he has in store. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out that Arthur was brought to our network, People of Distinction, by one of the best advertising firms in the business. People you already know I'm talking about, Author Reputation Press. So for my writers out there who have written their masterpiece and now you need help moving the book you just developed, contact ARP. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and this is exactly what they specialize in. So head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Arthur here on the line with us today, not only because he's a reoccurring guest, and of course that places a particular fondness in my heart, but Arthur is an impressive individual. The moment you hear him start to speak, you're going to understand why. For those of you that happen to miss out on previous occasions that he was with us, this is a man you need to get to know, all right? His books, The War We Almost Lost, The Journey to Hangtown Haven, were what we previously had discussed, and they were compelling to no end. So much value that it offered. Well, listen, A Hero's Life is what we're discussing today. And then finally in his canon, we have War is Hell. Both of those other books are just as impressive. This man knows what he's doing. This particular book, A Hero's Life, is based upon factual events. Now, to dispel any preconceived notions, it is a fictional book, although it's steeped in realistic circumstances. And Arthur is going to tell us really where those nuances fall in place, okay? But this is an incredibly compelling story about a design flaw in one of the U.S. Air Force's planes. And as always, Art is the expert. It's his book. He's written it. He's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. Sit back and strap in. Arthur, first and foremost, man, welcome back to People of Distinction, and thank you again for being a guest. How you doing, sir?
Fine. I appreciate being here. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Art, the pleasure is all ours, man. I really do mean it. You are an impressive individual, and this book is going to follow suit, I'm sure, in the same way your previous ones have. Before we go into your book, Art, for those of our listening audience members that missed the previous occasion you were with us, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background. Who is Arthur Edwards?
Graduated from Berkeley in mechanical engineering, worked as an aerospace engineer, designing satellites, and also, I was a commissioned naval officer upon graduation, served during the Korean War. I'm a veteran of that. Started writing after I retired, looking for something to do and felt some stories that I needed to tell. And that's how this book came about.
What an impressive resume and background you have, Art. Thank you very much for your service. And again, thank you for being a guest here with us through People of Distinction. Let's jump right in. The book we're discussing today is called A Hero's Life. Tell us a little bit more about it.
When you look on the cover of the book, you see a picture. It's an official Air Force photograph of a pilot climbing into the cockpit of his fighter plane during the Korean War. And that picture is of my cousin. He and I grew up together. Neither of us had brothers, so he and I played together a lot as kids, made model airplanes together, various things. We agreed to be pilots when we grew up. He was going to be in the Air Force and I was going to be in the Navy. I didn't do it my share. I wasn't a pilot, but anyway, he was. He became a fighter pilot during the Korean War, and he was stationed at McCord Air Force Base in Washington, state of Washington. Unfortunately, 2 weeks after this official photograph was taken of him climbing into his airplane, he was killed in a collision accident where he was taking off from McCord to intercept an airplane coming in, and his wingman was right beside him. And unfortunately, his wingman turned in sharply and collided with him. When the two planes collided about, a few hundred feet off the runway, they were both killed instantly. A terrible tragedy. Mm-hmm. The Air Force, of course, reviewed everything and wrote a report and came away saying the cause of the collision was pilot error. Now, when I heard that, I said, hogwash. They were both first lieutenants, very experienced pilots, each had been flying over a year, and no pilot is going to turn into his guy next to him without warning. Yeah. So I said, there's something going on here with this that we don't know about, that the Air Force is not admitting or talking about. So I said to myself, I'm going to find the real reason for this collision. And I've been snooping around. A few years later, got a phone call from somebody. He said he wouldn't tell me his name, but he said he had been a pilot flying the F-86 during the Korean War, and that he said the F-86 was the most dangerous airplane to fly that the Air Force ever had. He said many pilots were killed by accidents that they didn't seem to know what was causing them. Wow. So he said, start looking at the wing slats on the airplane. Now, I'm an aerospace engineer by training, so I kind of knew what he was referring to. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he hung up, and he went away. I've never heard from him again. So I went to the Air Force Base here in Sacramento and looked at the F-86 sitting on the tarmac just outside of one of the hangars, and I saw the slats. And it suddenly struck me what had been the problem as I was looking at them. As I say, being an aerospace engineer, I understood what makes planes fly and what makes them not fly, unfortunately. Yeah. And it occurred to me what had caused the problem. Well, now those things are all true. So I decided to write a story, a book, fiction, of course, about a hero who had just come back from World War II, Air Force pilot, and whose company had made this airplane that was crashing, and he was given the job of finding the real cause of these crashes. So that's what the story is about, as he wanders around the Air Force bases trying to figure out why this plane crashed and then there's a little, not exactly a romance because, of course, he's married and has several kids, but his partner is a woman with a degree in aeronautical engineering, and together they finally, after many chapters, finally it occurs to him that she makes a comment to him, and he said, "My God, you got the answer. This is the problem." Mm-hmm. And solved the problem, but now he had to decide whether to tell, make it public. Would his company appreciate him saying that they had misdesigned the airplane, or wouldn't he just be a nice guy and say, yeah, it was pilot error? But he had to make this decision, and I won't tell you what decision he makes because, of course, that is the main part of the book that you need to read to find out. And he has a family of 3 children, and he's got quite a task in front of him to figure out not only why this thing didn't work properly, but what he could do to redesign it to make it work and stop the crashes.
Yeah. Well, listen, people, Art said it best. All right, we're not giving everything away. You know where you got to go. You want to figure out what happened? You want to understand the nuances? You want to get to the bottom of this particular case? Well, the story is called A Hero's Life. It's available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, as well as his personal site, ArthurEdwardsBooks.com. Head on over there today, pick up copies of this magnificent book, and figure out the answers to those questions. Our follow-up that I want to go into, let's discuss the duality between fact versus fiction here for a moment. Obviously, this book came from a very personal place, right? This was I think you said it was your cousin. This was your family member that a situation very similar to what happens in the book happened with him. So what liberties did you take to enhance the story from a fictional perspective while also remaining true to the underlying reality?
Well, that wasn't difficult to do, of course. Just applied what I had learned and what I felt was the problem with my training, as a aeronautical engineer, and it occurred to me as just looking at the airplane sitting on the tarmac, what the problem was, and the story began to form in my mind as I'm staring at this airplane sitting there, F-86 that was built during the Korean War, and felt that there was ways we could discuss this issue and still make it kind of, entertaining and interesting to read, and keep kind of people on the edge of their seats, wondering how it was going to end. And I did my best with that. And but it's it's still everything has a true background and basis, and I think it fit into a story pretty well, actually.
Yeah. Well, listen, I agree. And, I think oftentimes we can find a lot of very valuable and poignant information found in fictional narratives, right? In fictional depictions, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, a song, whatever the case is. I've always been someone that can find a very powerful message and lessons to be learned within creative art forms, right? In different mediums of art. Well, I want to ask you here, Art, if we're sticking with that understanding of lessons to be learned, well, what lessons do you believe can be drawn from the events depicted in your book regarding the importance of rigorous testing and oversight in military design and engineering? What can be gained or pulled from this narrative?
That's a very good point. One thing that I wanted to add, and maybe answer your question, it was why the Air Force did not want to take the plane out of service to fix it. And it was during a period in the Korean War when the Russian MiG aircraft that we're fighting against had developed supersonic capabilities and transonic and could go faster than sound. And the only plane we had that could stand up against it was this F-86. Mm-hmm. So when you wonder, why didn't the Air Force do something about it? If they had pulled those planes out of service to fix them, there would be nothing to keep the MiGs from controlling the sky over Korea, because our plane was the only, the F-86 was the only one that could go, that was transonic, supersonic, and could stay up against them. So there is a reason why they did. I think, they didn't say anything about it, but it's obvious that why they didn't pull them out of service and fix them is because they needed something to stand up against the Russian plane.
Yeah.
So I guess you can make a reason for it. And I'm not sure it's a good reason, but it's I'm sure that's what was going on.
No, absolutely. Art, that brings up a moral dilemma, right? Because
yes,
from the U.S. Air Force standpoint, if you remove these planes, yes, you will be saving lives in terms of the soldiers and the unnecessary loss of life with regards to that, right? Your cousin being one. But also, now you're weighing the scales, and if you take those planes away, you're protecting those soldiers, but you're also now potentially losing the war. So that brings up a very, very tough moral dilemma that, again, to take a step outside of this world. Again, I've admitted, and I will continue to admit, an unnecessary loss of life, and something that I can continue to offer my sincerest condolences to your loss and for your cousin's unnecessary loss of his life. But at the same time, when you pose it that way, from a moral dilemma there and what is at stake, well, now it's not so easy, right? Now it's not so black and white. And you kind of have to toe the line to try to figure out, how do we accomplish both? Or is it even possible to do so?
Yes, you hit the nail
compelling.
right on the head. And that's the dilemma that my hero in the book is facing. When he discovers the problem and figures out how to fix it, then he's faced with that dilemma that you're just talking about.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Art, as we start to close out of here, man, a curiosity for myself, since this is a book that, like I said, from a reader's standpoint, will be remarkably entertaining, will be insightful, will make them ponder. For you writing it, well, you're a lot closer to the story than, probably 99% of the people that pick it up and read it. Well, I'm curious, when you were writing the book, what type of emotional conflicts or maybe just trauma that you were revisiting, having been so close to this situation, what type of emotional trauma was peering through, and how did you battle against that and continue to push through writing the narrative?
In the middle of writing it, my wife and I traveled to Portland, Oregon. There's a burial spot that the military has there just outside of Portland, and it's where my cousin is buried. Mm-hmm. And we went, and I sat by his gravesite for some time, reliving the good times we had and asking some of the questions you're asking. Why was it him that, was it necessary for young men like him to pay with their lives to make our war successful, I guess is the best way to put it. Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't come up with any good answers, but that kept me going in writing the book, and gave me, kind of in the middle, you get kind of worn down, and you can't quite figure out how the book's going to end. So sitting by his gravesite and looking at his grave and name and so forth, rank, First Lieutenant James Teaslink, and saying, why did this have to happen? and then trying to put all that together in a readable book was the issue, and things that are interesting to you aren't necessarily interesting to everybody else.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful there, and so it's quite a process.
People, I'm telling you, this is quite a book. Okay, and one that you really need to add to your shelf. I know that you're all like me and you're hooked already, right? You're already heading on over to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and his personal website, ArthurEdwardsBooks.com, because you recognize the value. You recognize the journey you're getting ready to embark upon and the conversations that's going to spark because of it. Well, I promise you this. His other books, The War We Almost Lost, The Journey to Hangtown Haven, War is Hell, are going to be just as compelling and just as informative and really spark similar conversations, similar in-depth, intellectual, and philosophical conversations, mind you. I'm telling you, this man writes books that are wonderfully entertaining, but also are just steeped with so much value and wisdom. They need to be added to your shelf. So you know where to go. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, figure out why I say that, because I promise you, if you start reading these books and you walk away with a different opinion, you didn't read the same book. Okay, you're going to have the same opinions as I have, because you're going to understand that it's all completely true. And you have Arthur Edwards to thank for all of it. Art, man, listen, this is always a pleasure. You are truly a magnificent individual. We're looking forward to more books on the horizon. And because of that, we're looking forward to having you back as a guest once again. But for this time, thank you for being with us on People of Distinction.
Well, thank you very much, Benji.